this time of year. Fortunately, we've got some more exciting topics for you today. So as always, thanks for everyone for listening and tuning in. You can find our information and podcast here on the John Howard Society of PEI YouTube channel. You can also find it through our social media and website. We've got a great guest with us today, so we'll get to that here shortly. I'm Josh Constantinou, the Coordinated Access Coordinator with the John Howard Society, and hosting as always with our co-host here.
Yes, everyone. Conor Mullin here, as usual, President of the John Howard Society Board of Directors of Prince Edward Island. And as Josh said, joining here today on this beautiful, blustery, cold fall day on Prince Edward Island. But we do have a very exciting guest here, and somebody who may even, in fact, be dealing with some worse weather than we are right now.
Yes, Cindy, welcome in. And would you like to share a little bit about yourself and weather-related information there?
Hi, thanks very much. Thanks for inviting me to join your podcast today. As you said, I'm Cindy Murphy. I'm with the John Howard Society of Newfoundland and Labrador as their executive director. And so happy to chat a little bit today about my journey with the organization and certainly about some of the services and programs that we provide here in Newfoundland.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it. And thanks for coming on with us. We're very excited to have you, and always great to have a fellow John Howard member on the podcast.
Absolutely. Cindy,
my pleasure.
Cindy has been with the John Howard Society longer than most, Cindy.
Yes, I'm in my 32nd year with John Howard. Wow. It's been quite a journey, let me tell you, but a good one.
I can only imagine. So certainly very excited to hear about your time with the organization and the changes that you've seen over that time.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, can't wait to delve into that. Before we go down that road, which is going to be a fun one, as usual, we'll kind of chat about what's going on in the world of John Howard here at PEI, and Cindy can then kind of chime in with some Newfoundland and Labrador stuff. But Conor, I'll turn it over to you first from a board level. I know we all got together there last night, which was nice.
So we had our John Howard PEI annual general meeting last night, which is just kind of a great way to sort of wrap up year-end business. And very excitingly, we've welcomed 4 new board of directors to the board. We've had a number of people step down from the board over the past year, but we've got an influx of new members who were all approved, their membership approved last night. People from a diverse array of backgrounds: accounting, military, justice, advertising, marketing. So a real nice diversity of backgrounds and voices to add to the board. And I'm very excited about the potential and the perspective that they're going to bring to the organization as we move forward. And as you said, Josh, we all got together, board and staff, afterward for our annual dinner, which is always a great time to get everybody together and just chat and get to know one another, talk about the work that we do, and just enjoy each other's company. So it's always a great event, something I look forward to, and last night was no exception. So that's kind of what's happening at our local board of directors level. We've got some things on the agenda coming up for discussion, some very big items. I don't want to give too much away right now, just because they are still in that very early discussion stage.
Right.
But I hope to be able to provide some future updates on a couple of big ticket items in future podcasts. Possibility of establishing a social enterprise, looking at maybe establishing a halfway house on PEI, things of that nature. I won't say any more than that until things get a little more finalized, but those are some directions that the board's looking to go in. Other than that, we had the John Howard Society of Canada annual general meeting in Calgary a couple of weeks ago. Cindy was there from Newfoundland as well. It was a great couple of days. I think Cindy, I really quite enjoyed the discussions that we had and the tour we got to have of the John Howard Calgary facilities there.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I really appreciated the meetings and the topics this year. We were looking, of course, at diversity, equity, and inclusion was a big part of our discussions, and needing to develop, I guess, a statement for John Howard Canada, and so we all worked together on that. So that was quite interesting, actually.
It really was, and and it's a very important topic, one that kind of becomes more important every day from a number of perspectives. And I think it's something, it was a very useful exercise because it's definitely something that we can all bring back to our respective provinces and territories, and work on making sure that from the ground up, we're making John Howard as diverse and inclusive an organization as possible.
Yeah, totally agree. It's work that we all need to be challenged around for sure. And I think, the thing that really hit home for me was that has to be a practice. It's not just some, one-off training. It has to be something that we incorporate into our everyday work, both at the board and staff level. So looking forward to more work on that. Our board are meeting actually next month, and we're going to be doing some work on this as well. So interesting times.
Yeah, and we're doing the same. We're going to be having our own a DEI training session for our board as well in the coming months. We have a statement, a DEI statement that we had worked on and adopted, but we're going to look at that and update it if necessary, and also start looking at just sort of all of our organizational policies and practices through that lens to make sure that we're, as you say, it's not just a matter of kind of talking the talk, it's walking the walk too, and making sure that we're living up to that statement and those principles in everything we do.
Yeah, totally agree. And like I said, I think it has to start with the board level and down through our staff, but it needs to be incorporated in our policies, procedures, in our daily activities and interactions with our participants for sure.
Absolutely. And then some other kind of great stuff we got to do in Calgary. We got to have a tour of a halfway house facility that they have up there, which was really nice. It's a really nice facility. We got to look at some of the living quarters. They're great little apartments that they have for people, and just kind of see how they support people in transition back from federal custody into the community. So that was really great. We had a presentation on the Central Alberta Drug Treatment Court, which is like a resounding success. Probably sounds like one of the most successful drug treatment courts in Canada. And I know we don't have a drug treatment court in PEI. I hope we are going to develop one soon. I don't know if you guys have one in Newfoundland, do you?
We do. We have a number of specialized courts, including that one. We have the Intimate Partner Violence Court, the Drug Court, and a Mental Health Court.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we have the Intimate Partner Violence Court here. We don't have the Drug Court yet. I hope we do. But I was saying that when we start to develop one, I hope we look at their model in Central Alberta, because that seems to be highly successful. I think they said they have like a 70 to 80% success rate with people who go through that court, which is huge.
Yeah,
tremendous. Yeah, it really was. It was impressive, and delighted to hear about that. And yeah, just kind of wondering, in terms of our own here and how things work. Not a huge number going through ours. I think it's very limited in terms of who they accept. So I'd like to see some changes happening there. So maybe something down the road we can begin to advocate for.
For sure. And then, so the other kind of big sort of talk, or the one that I was most interested in, was a talk about the supports they have for people with FASD, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And just, what they have in place to get people assessed and diagnosed, and then supports that they can have for people suffering from that diagnosis. Because as they said, it's more prevalent in the community than I think most people realize, but it's especially prevalent in the prison population. And again, like I was saying, I don't think we have anyone on PEI here that kind of specializes in either those diagnoses or supports. But I hope that we can bring something in, because I'm sure it certainly is very prevalent here. And I know from my time working in Newfoundland, or at least in Labrador, I know it was pretty prevalent there as well.
Absolutely. And like you or your province, I don't think we're equipped to deal with it. I think there's many of the folks that we work with go undiagnosed, and and obviously not getting the treatment and supports that they need. So yeah, it's definitely an area we should be focused on.
Yeah, and as I was saying to our board last night, I always these John Howard Society of Canada meetings, I always enjoy them so much because first of all, it's just nice to hear and see what everyone else in other provinces is doing, and it's kind of nice to know that we're not alone in the struggle. But I always come away from these meetings with energized and with new ideas of things that we can try or might try to implement in our own province. So I always get a tremendous amount from attending these meetings.
Yeah, me as well. And every year they're always different. And I think what's unique about John Howard, as we are a federation of provinces, territories, that we all operationalize our mission statement, which is pretty much in common, but we all do it differently. And so to see how things are being done in other jurisdictions, other provinces, other towns and communities is always really interesting. And like you said, to be able to bring that back to our own communities and see how we can make those things work here is always a great challenge for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, I think Josh, that's basically it, kind of from a board perspective since our last podcast.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty significant. You say that, but I mean, that's a lot of great stuff. And yeah, it's always nice to hear some of the trickle back from the national meeting when you come back and you relay some of that to us and we get to hear about these great ideas. I was thinking about that today of this concept of like, there's so many brilliant people out there doing brilliant things that we don't have to be responsible for coming up with all this stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
Like we can just adapt and adopt, right?
Yep.
So from like a program and service update, couple of things to sort of note. So we talked about the CRA tax clinic that's gone on here a couple of times, and that continues to be a partnership that we have with CRA. So they did another tax clinic on October 28th. From our end, we helped 17 individuals and 46 tax returns.
Wow.
So I think that was a huge success. We're still waiting on sort of CRA's report to say kind of how many people they helped with on their end. But one of the things is that there's a plan in place now for this to be a standing event that happens every 3 months.
Oh, awesome.
So, I think they've been kind of trending towards that commitment. There seemed to be an interest from all parties and a clear need.
Yeah.
But it seems like there's moving more towards that formalized plan.
And one of the things that strikes me about that is that, every couple of months we host this and you'd think that sort of over time, the number of people attending or the number of people that we assist would kind of start to die down, but it doesn't seem to be, right? Which I think speaks to just the need and the importance of having this on a regular basis.
Yeah, it kind of seems like for every person that gets serviced, there's someone out there that didn't know this existed that comes to the next one.
Yeah.
And it's just like this cycle of like, you kind of knock one off and then somebody new emerges. And so it's probably hard to say just how many people out there actually have this need. But I mean, we're starting to get a sense of that. And I think it's probably greater than maybe CRA anticipated or even perhaps we anticipated at the beginning.
Yeah, but that's great. It's great that we're again able to provide that service and help all these people.
Yeah, no, and it's fantastic that people are getting that support. And I think it speaks to the challenges of accessing CRA. Yeah. And so the fact that we're able to bring them right there in person, that's making a huge difference.
Absolutely.
If we could just jump in, one of the things we're doing in relation to that here in Newfoundland is we have a number of volunteers who work with our participants who've identified they have, tax needs or whatever, and they work strictly on a volunteer basis and will help submit the appropriate forms to CRA. So we've had that for several years, and oh gosh, I wish I had known the number, but I know we probably did 100 or more last year.
Wow,
nice.
Yeah, so definitely the need is there, and
yeah.
I think there's an more and more reliance or understanding the need to be filing the tax returns because they're often now linked to some of the federal benefits that our participants can engage in. So you talk about the health, the health benefits or other things, some of the rebates that we've been getting. Of course, you have to have your income tax up to date and filed. So we're seeing a little bit more urgency, I think, on the part of some folks to be able to access those other things as well.
Yeah, it's a serious need all over Canada. I know. I think the number from CRA was that like last year, I think there were over 7,000 people like nationwide who sort of the volunteer tax program assisted. So
Wow.
it's a serious need across Canada.
For
Yeah,
sure.
and to your point, Cindy, I mean, not only just the like financial benefits, but we're seeing now some of the like subsidized housing applications, municipally or provincially, are requiring tax information. So,
Right.
it's starting to kind of bleed into other sectors or other opportunities. So it really is becoming, I would say, pretty close to being mandatory at this point, or like an essential service.
Correct. Yeah. Good point.
The other thing that happened, there's a couple, but so every year the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness hosts an annual conference where they gather people together from all across the country, and they have keynote speakers and sessions for individuals. So I was fortunate to be able to attend that this year, as I did last year. This one was in Ottawa, and we had over 2,000 people there.
Wow.
So it was a lot of folks, a lot of great opportunities there for networking, for going to different sessions. And so, I got to attend the veterans session. There was one veteran specific session, so I got to go to that, make some connections, bring back some information, a couple around coordinated access, private landlords. So, it was very helpful to get some of that information, and sort of the same way we talked earlier, get to see what are different communities across Canada that are servicing the similar population. What are they up to, and what are they doing to try to come up with ideas and solutions?
Great to hear that there's so many people attending.
Yeah, it was packed.
Huge. We didn't go this year. We did last year when it was in Halifax.
Sure.
You guys are the community entity, I think, too. Are you, for Reaching Home?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, right. So, okay, good. Yeah, we're not obviously the community entity here in Newfoundland, but we certainly participate in, CAB discussions. We've been on the CAB for years for St. John's. And so, yeah, an important piece of work. We're all trying to struggle with the lack of affordable housing.
For sure. Yeah. And it was, it's always interesting to hear kind of what's going on from a federal level in terms of some of the initiatives or programs that they're working on. And then, just get that lens from different communities as to what they're up to, and also make some connections. Both last year and this year, come away with at least one or two people to reach out to afterwards and say, let's talk more about what you're doing in your community and ours, and have a bit of a knowledge exchange.
Absolutely.
The other thing that we had referenced was right around the corner when we did our last podcast was the point in time count.
Yes.
So we did complete our point in time count in October. We are in the midst of data entry. We are hoping to have that wrapped up sooner rather than later, and then start to move into developing our final report and taking away some, having some key takeaways through the data analysis that we'll get to do.
Yeah, and that's going to be great when those numbers come out, right? And we're able to see the true extent of the problem, or at least as accurate as we can get, right? I always say I'm, as thorough and kind of well-intentioned as these are, there are always going to be people that are missed, right?
Sure.
So it's always, I think, going to be a little bit of an undercount or a conservative estimate.
Yeah.
But just to get a better idea of the extent of the problem is going to be so important as we move forward to address it. So I'm really looking forward to that coming out. And one thing, we should mention, Josh, we had tremendous volunteer support.
Yes.
To assist with getting the point in time count done this year, and we're going to be hosting a little reception and kind of thank you event for some of those volunteers next week.
Yeah. Next Friday we have a little event. We're going to do a debrief / appreciation, and so as you said, there was we had over 70 people from different organizations come out and spend time, away from their day-to-day work to help us with this. And so, it shows the collaboration and the dedication from the community that, this is something people are passionate about and they wanted to participate in.
Yeah, and it's great to see that, as I say, sometimes a lot of the time the work that we do can feel a little bit lonely, and it can feel like it's a little bit thankless, and it can feel kind of like we're swimming upstream a lot of the time. But when you see that kind of volunteer support, or when you attend things like the John Howard Canada events, or the Conference on Ending Homelessness, right? And you just see all the other people that are in the same boat as you, and fighting for the same goal. It always helps to kind of refill the spirit a little bit.
Yes.
From what can sometimes be, pretty difficult and demanding work.
For sure.
Yeah, I agree. I've done a number of those point time counts myself. I've walked the beat and met with people who we came across, and it's always a really eye-opening experience to hear people's stories, and and to gather that information. So while I know it's only a point in time, it's only a snapshot of some of the folks that we encounter, but it's certainly important in the work that we do.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, helps give us some better information.
Yeah.
The last thing I just wanted to touch on is the evolution and development of our veterans case management program. So, we had talked about how we had a staff member and it was getting up and running. And so it's been slowly but surely evolving as it needs. We've had some meetings with Veterans Affairs. We've done some consultation with Housing and Infrastructure Communities Canada. I met some folks there at the conference that, provided some tips and information and resources. So slowly but surely, we're kind of seeing the program take shape, which I think is really exciting. And I think one of the assets that we have is, because it's brand new, while there are certainly some requirements as per the funding agreement, we have this opportunity to say, okay, well, what does it need to look like here on PEI, and how can it be most effective and beneficial to the veterans in our community?
Yeah, and I think, if I remember correctly, Josh, when we had our last podcast, we had just launched the program that morning.
Yeah,
that's
we did
right.
The official launch.
The official launch was done that morning. So, and since then, the program continues to grow and take shape. But I know from speaking with our caseworker for that program that we're already providing housing assistance to veterans,
Yes.
Homeless or at risk of homeless veterans here on PEI, and we've gotten some people into accommodations and things of that nature as well. So even within a month, right, we're already the need's already there, and it's already paying dividends and getting people housed. So it's great to have that program launched, and I look forward to how that program's going to continue to grow in the future.
For sure. All right, that was all I had. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on that's going on locally there, Conor, before we turn it over to Cindy?
I don't think so. No, I'm excited to turn it over to Cindy and hear about her, say, 32-year journey with the John Howard Society in quite a number of different roles as well, Cindy.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks again for the invitation. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how I became involved in John Howard Society, and it was purely by accident, to be honest. I went back to university with the intention of doing something non-criminal justice related, and was just doing an elective here at Memorial. And I had a guest speaker come in, and he was talking about a volunteer program at the local penitentiary, Her Majesty's Penitentiary, that was operating, and they were looking for volunteers. And I was just intrigued, I guess, at the time to think, wow, that's really different. And I think I'll go chat with him. And I ended up doing that and became a volunteer in that program, which was called 7 Steps. Again, that goes back in the early 90s. So that program still exists. I think it's in a different formation than it was back then. But it's obviously it's stayed the course, and it's been important. But I guess that was my first introduction to corrections, and walking into the penitentiary and meeting some of the folks, both staff and the inmates at the time, and thinking, wow, I never dreamed I was going to be in here. But it turned out to be a really rewarding experience, and that it was the volunteer experience was about, sharing values, encouraging folks to make plans, thinking about their future, those types of things. So it was meaningful. And then I heard about John Howard Society and Howard House, which is one of our residential programs, or halfway houses for folks who are on conditional release. we're also looking for volunteers. So I was still in the university, so I began volunteering at Howard House as well. So it was a busy time back then. But yeah, I guess it was kind of like it got into your system. Like, this is really interesting work, and I can see that this would be rewarding. So I went on to apply for relief staff in the halfway house. Managed to get a full-time job when I finished my undergraduate degree, and then went on from there, ended up being house director, and I was in that position until I applied for the executive director's position back in 2006. So it's been quite a journey in some ways, and completely different than what I thought I would, where I'd end up at, in my career. It's really interesting how life takes these twists and turns. And it's funny, I grew up in a large family, and there were 7 of us. And I remember my mother used to say this all the time, and I think back on it now and laugh. And she said, "My goodness, this place is like a halfway house." And the way, all the kids would be acting up, and they were loud, and and this was, and I thought to myself, Mom, you never thought your daughter was going to end up working in one, but but yeah. So I think when I think back on this, I guess because I'm moving towards the end of my career, and as I closer to retirement, you tend to reflect back, I guess, how did you end up here, and why did you stay so long, and those types of things, and I really don't have a clear answer for it. I guess it's because, like I said, I think it's closely aligns with your own values. I mean, the work of John Howard Society, around social justice issues, and giving people second chances, and giving people a bit of a leg up in life, and that kind of fits, I guess, with my own personal philosophy. So I think when those things align with your work, it becomes so much more meaningful, in your day to day, and it's not those uphill climbs are not always as steep as they could be, so because you're working towards something that you really believe in. So it's been it's been my life's work, and I've for the most part, I can say I've enjoyed every moment. This is along the way, but yeah.
That's great, Cindy, and that is really interesting, the journey you've taken through John Howard. So lots of stuff I'd like to get into that with you, but one thing I want to start with, and I think it's kind of one of the big criminal justice issues in Newfoundland, is the state of Her Majesty's Penitentiary. So as you say, you've been going into that penitentiary since the early 90s. What can you say about the state and the conditions of that penitentiary then as compared to now, and where you hope to see it go?
Well, that's been one of the biggest challenges. There's no question about it. And feel like, you're not making the progress you'd like to see happen, within that facility. And obviously with the, announcement of a new one that's supposedly in the planning stage, little has changed. In fact, sad to report that I even said to somebody this week, I think it's the worst I've seen it in my whole career. And as I'm sitting here on this podcast, my email is flashing up, and their CBC are looking for me because they aired a story about Her Majesty's this morning. So so the work continues. It's frustrating. It's a bit demoralizing, I have to be honest, that people can be treated that way, and that there's really not a huge commitment to make the changes that need to happen in a timely manner. One of the things that we're experiencing here in the province, of course, and I think we're seeing it right across the country, is the high remand population. But in our situation, we've got a bit of a perfect storm, especially in Her Majesty's, which is the largest provincial institution in Newfoundland. We've got extreme shortage of correctional officers working in the facility, and we've got overcrowding for a facility that has a capacity of about 180. We're going to be up to 240, I think, next week.
Wow.
And now we're even housing females being brought in from the female institution in Clarenville because they are overcrowded as well. So what has normally been a provincial institution for males, we're now housing females up in an intermittent section. And the folks who are doing intermittent sentences, or weekends as we call them, are now going to be housed in the gym on cots. So that's creating a whole host of issues for us as an organization. We obviously not getting access like we normally would. Normally we're in there 5 days a week, pretty much. delivering programs and services. And we've just, we call up in the morning and any chance we're going to get in today. And quite often we're hearing, no, we're short on staff. So not only for us as a community organization are we impacted in the work that we are contracted actually through the Department of Justice and Public Safety to provide, but I mean, inmates are certainly compromised every single day. There's more lockdowns than ever before. People are confined to their cells, confined to their units. They're not getting recreation. They're not getting outside for fresh air. Visits are often delayed or denied because there's not enough staff to get them to the visiting room, or they can't get down to, to have a virtual visit. We know that when you're talking about overcapacity issues, the services that are in place for supposedly for 180 inmates, which are often somewhat limited, when you move the numbers up to 240, you can just imagine healthcare and other kinds of things. Release planning, meetings with classification, meetings with other community organizations, be it us, John Howard Society, First Light or Indigenous folks, provide supporting the institutions, chaplaincy, you name it, are all impacted because they're not able to access the institution. So that's a bit of a snapshot or a glimpse into what's going on at HMP. They have announced that we're in the process of building a new prison. I've been hearing that for many, many years. I have seen the plans. Since those initial plans were released, they've developed others because the cost was too high, prohibitive. So they've asked us what could we cut back or what could they cut back. So that's an exercise. But, there's a site plan, there's a site announced. So hopefully, I don't know if it'll be in my time, but I'm certainly hopeful that, things will change. Unfortunately for corrections, and the folks who are involved in corrections, there's not a lot of community support. And so I think this is why this podcast and other kind of things like this are so important to help reach the community to talk about some of the issues. It's not about just, John Howard Society. We've often heard the saying we're offender huggers. All we do is support people who have broken the law. Well, unfortunately, we do a lot more. Fortunately, we do a lot more than that. And we're just not advocates. We provide services and programs that help people, reduce the risk to reoffend. And at the end of the day, we all should be working for the same goal, and that is to enhance public safety and reduce victimization. So, So I think.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so I think, these kinds of things are really important to help people understand. It's in all of us, it's in our all best interest, especially for provincial folks who we know are going to be released. They are coming back to our community, and so they could be living next door to you or I. And so we want them to be better, and we need them to be better. And for their own personal growth and lives, we, to help them with a bit of a leg up in life and give them the skills that they need to be contributing members of our community.
You're absolutely right, Cindy. And the issues that you described at Her Majesty's Penitentiary, I think they exist in a lot of correctional facilities across Canada. I know just before I came here, I was down at our Provincial Correctional Center here in Charlottetown or in Prince Edward Island. And, and I was meeting with the manager with some other people, and we were just chatting about some of these issues. And, we're seeing the same thing there, lack of correctional staff, really high percentage of the population on remand, like something like almost 60% of the offenders are on remand. We're getting close to inmate capacity, and then all the issues that leads to as well. And when you talk about the work that we do with John Howard, and you say people think, oh, we're just here to kind of help out these offenders, and that's true, but we also do a lot for the correctional staff too. Like we're involved in release planning, we're trying to get housing for people, income support, all that stuff, so that we can set people up for success when they get out. And that's what the jail wants too. The jail doesn't want to release people into homelessness, right? They want to make sure that people are set up for success, so they're not coming in, back in. So the work that we're doing, it helps the inmate population, but it helps the correctional staff as well.
Absolutely. Yes. And those relationships are so important to the work that we do. So when I'm talking, publicly, whether it's, with the local media or whatever, about the conditions of our correctional facility, I always, include the staff and the impact that that's having on them. So when we're talking about overcrowding, when we're talking about a shortage of staff, that means people have to work overtime. People are mandated, for 24-hour shifts. The impact that has on work-life balance, on morale, on, so many things. So it's, we're all in this together, I guess is the point, and that we need to be working together to try to, come up with solutions and ways that are probably not conventional in nature to be able to address some of these concerns. And I guess, I will respond to CBC in that request for an interview today, as I often do. But I'll do it in a way that's, I hope I'm not, being overly critical, but I'm all of the Department of Justice and Public Safety, because it is a partnership. But highlighting the issues, we have a job to do, and that we need to do it in a way that's respectful, but provide understanding.
No, absolutely. I've worked in the criminal justice field for about a decade now, and I've worked in a number of different provinces, and I've been in a number of different institutions, visiting, clients and inmates and things of that nature. And I do want to say that, here on PEI, we're quite lucky with our provincial correctional center. I think of all the provincial facilities I've been in across Canada, it's probably one of the nicest.
Absolutely. I've been there. Oh my gosh. I was, I was practically dancing when we had it, when the last year when I was over there, we had, someone took us through there, and one of the staff, and it was, I was amazed but the space, the actual space, the cleanliness, the organization, there were so many things that I was like envious about, to be honest. I even said it to the person who was taking us through. Oh my gosh. So I feel, I wish that we had something similar in our province, but yeah. So, prison conditions are, and conditions of confinement are something that we really need to be talking to. You just can't warehouse people and expect them to do better. And I think very often that's what happens, and that's the perception. It's kind of this lock them up and throw away the key, and they did the crime, they can do the time kind of a philosophy. But we know that doesn't work. Just locking people up in and of itself does not deter crime. There's tons of research to support that. That we need to help people to address the factors that bring them into conflict with criminal justice, so they can have the skills and abilities to do something different once released, and connect them to community resources upon that release. Just to open up the gate and send them on and say, okay, you're done your time. But oftentimes you're dealing with folks who have many, deficit areas. And what I mean by that, most respectfully, they're dealing with, a whole bunch of issues in their lives, everything from early adverse childhood experiences, that often sets the stage for the rest of their lives, and things that they had no control over as kids, and get perpetuated, throughout the years through addiction, mental health issues, lack of education, low employability skills, all those different things. And so just to lock people up and deny them their freedom is one part of our criminal justice system. But I always say, and I think this point is so important, and I remember hearing it early in my career, that the punishment is the loss of freedom. It doesn't mean that we continue to punish people every single day while they're in custody.
Yep.
And that, that I'm not sure everybody gets that, but it's, how do you help people, navigate the system, navigate something different? Because my experience overwhelmed me, and the thousands of people I guess John Howard has worked with over my career. The common denominators, most folks do not want to be in custody. That's not where they want to be, and they come out with some good intentions, like this last time I'm coming here. But what fails to happen, of course, for many of them, is they don't have the supports and structures that they need upon release. And so my mother always used to say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And so you can have the best intentions in the world not to be, involved and come into conflict with criminal justice again. But if you don't have a plan and the resources and support you need, the chances are pretty good you're going to be back inside again.
Yeah. And kind of circling back to something that you said earlier, so you talk about there, when it comes to the field of corrections, there's a real lack of public support, and I'm sure you've dealt with it, and we deal with it here too, is that, when you try to establish some kind of facility to help people, be it like transitional housing or something, there's a lot of community pushback, and people don't want it in their neighborhood, and they don't see the need or the point for it, or like say, or if they do, they don't want it and those people around them. And and the thing that I always want to come back to is I say, well, look, yes, people have made mistakes, they've done a bad thing, they go to jail, but unless you're Paul Bernardo or Robert Picton or the worst of the worst, everybody that goes into jail gets out one day, and they're going to come back to the community. And I for one think it's better for them and for the community if they can come back in a supported, safe way, so that we can give them those skills to successfully reintegrate and contribute to that community and be a part of that community, rather than, as you say, just, okay, you did your time, here you go, you're on your own now.
Absolutely. The whole idea of NIMBY, right? Not in my backyard, is something that we, constantly face as an organization. But, I'll tell you an interesting story about that. One of our halfway houses is right in the center of town, and it's been there now for over 40 years. And we operate very quietly. We're supportive of our neighbors. We help out our neighbors, and we just try to keep a low profile. So when a number of years ago, I guess it's probably 8 years ago now, we were looking at developing some supportive housing. And the only piece of property we had, of course, was adjacent to the halfway house on the hill. Garrison Hill here in St. John's. And, I thought, okay, might get some pushback here now about this new development, because we were going to put 10 independent living units there, and that people, not necessarily all criminal justice, but they would come from coordinated access through end homelessness, St. John's. But more than likely, they would have some criminal justice involvement. And so, we were trying to get out ahead of the whole NIMBY thing. So once the development was, approved, and looks like we were going to move ahead. So myself and another program manager at the time, we developed pamphlets, and we said, okay, we're going to go knocking on doors in the neighborhood, and we're going to talk to people about what it is we're proposing here and what it's not. And I got to say, it was an amazing experience in some ways, because the very things I thought we wouldn't experience, we didn't. And that there was a ton of support for us. And that, the overwhelming majority said, oh, John Howard, oh, yeah, you're over there. You've been there forever. Oh, yeah, no problem. That kind of way, So I think our reputation in our community and how we communicate things and how we interact with our neighbors and other community members is so important to this work. Yep. In that, we're not out to, obviously to bring harm. But I understand the other side of it as well, that many of the opposition, or much of the opposition, I guess, is based on fear, real or imagined, but it's fear and it's real. And that people think that, okay, if you're going to bring those services, such as we do, into any particular area, then that means there's crime coming with it. But I always say the safest place that you can live is next to a halfway house, because it's staffed 24 hours a day, and people are monitored closely, So it is interesting, but the work, it's always a challenge for that reason, trying to garner community support. And, a big piece of what we do needs to be public education that we continue to provide, and our mission is so important. It's about effective, just, and humane responses, right, to crime and its consequences. And how do we do that in a way that benefits all of us in our communities?
Absolutely. And I'm glad to hear that you guys had that community support. And as you say, the John Howard brand and the John Howard name, is so important in that regard, because we are a longstanding organization. We're nationwide, and we have a good reputation across Canada. And that's so important that we all work to make sure that we maintain that, so that we can get this work done.
Yeah, absolutely. For us here in Newfoundland, we've been around since 1951. And I think about when I, go back and I look through some of the things that the early days in John Howard. I mean, we started with, just a few staff and a board, and the very first person that John Howard worked with was a man who was getting released from prison, and we were working with him to find employment and a house to live in, or a place to live in. And so that was our very first, But also, over the years, think about how we've grown as an organization into a very professional organization that, it's grown in terms of size and the scope and the variety of programs that we offer. And I'd like to believe that we're in a place, well, there's always room for more, believe you me, but we're in a place that we do provide a lot of wraparound services, everything from mental health counseling to intensive case management services. We do housing. We have 2 halfway houses, as we talked about. We have group homes for young offenders. We have supportive housing. But we also deliver a lot of criminogenic programs. And what they are programs, of course, you and I would know, but they're programs that target risk, right? So we target the risk factors that bring people into conflict with criminal justice and hopefully give them the skills and abilities and tools they need to prevent, further involvement. So we do them in the community, mostly through probation orders, right? So folks who are given a community disposition of probation, and they come to us for, various programs such as substance abuse disorders, intimate partner violence, emotions management. We also do psycho-ed programs in the way of like a dad's program. So we're doing some parenting work, doing peer driving. Those are just some of the things that we're doing. And of course, employment side of things is really important as well. So we have employment staff, about five employment counselors who are working both in record suspension and in and providing, employment opportunities, some wage subsidy programs, those types of things. So through all of that, it's all about trying to respond to the needs of those who are in front of you, those who are, are knocking on our doors. But housing is huge for all of us. This housing crisis since the pandemic has just exacerbated everything that we do. It's heightened people's mental health issues. It's heightened people's substance use. It's just so many, and the challenges are even greater. So it has to be a priority, I think, and is one that we're working on here in Newfoundland.
For sure. Yeah. And like you touched on there, it's certainly evolved a lot from when you first got into things and where things are at now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Gone through where we had a couple of staff and now we're up over 100, and we're not only in St. John's, but we're in Stephenville, Corner Brook and Grand Falls and expanding all the time. So to try and meet the needs. But one of the things too, we've been really focused on, and we're really, it's early days in the proposal process. We have submitted a proposal to the Department of Justice and Public Safety because one of the silver linings, I guess, of the pandemic was this need to shift to virtual programming. So we've done that, actually. We've done it remarkably well. We've done our research. Although the research is still trying to catch up a little bit in terms of the efficacy. But we're in partnership with Dalhousie University doing some research around the efficacy of virtual programming. But we're requesting, and hopefully if we get the funding for it, we're going to expand our program footprint, whereby we can provide virtual programs to virtually anywhere in the province, including Labrador. So if we're lucky enough to get that for the new fiscal year, we'll be really excited about that because it will open up opportunities that weren't available to folks in more rural and remote areas.
That's awesome. And I think that kind of ties into the last piece that I wanted to touch on here as we move towards the end of our time is just, I guess, next steps for you and where things are at and what you're looking to is, like you said, you kind of near the end of your time, your retirement years there at John Howard.
Yeah, well, I did give the board a timeline, but I said shifted a little bit just because of a couple of things in the hopper. So I'd be happy to stick around for a short time to help see those through. But there'll always be another project, I think. So at some point in time, I have to really put down a firm date and say it's time to go. I guess in some ways I'm still passionate about the work, right? So there's that keeps you going. But I also realize it's probably a good time for change. To bring in some new ideas, somebody new at the helm, someone is going to bring in, new energy and new ideas, and to keep this going. It's funny, in all the years that John Howard has been in operation here in Newfoundland, we've only had 2 EDs. So for over 70 years, there's only been 2 executive directors at the helm. My predecessor, Terry Carlson, was well known to John Howard, and he was here, right up until I took over for him when he retired. And so, yeah, and so it comes a time that I think that it's it's time for some new energy. And and I can look back on this career and say, wow, it's been my life's work. It has been important. It's been extremely meaningful to me, and no regrets.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure I can speak for, well, I know I'll speak for the John Howard Canada, but I'm sure I speak for Newfoundland as well, Cindy, when I say that, your dedication and your passion and your voice is going to be missed around the table. I can say that. So, but I hope that Newfoundland and Canada gets to keep you for a little while yet.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I've enjoyed my time at those tables. Love the new partnership we formed with John Howard Atlantic, with PEI Nova Scotia, ourselves in New Brunswick, sort of working on kind of regional program ideas, and another meeting next week on a possible project. So, those things are important. And like I said, it's all about the relationships in this work, whether it's, the professional relationships that we have with each other, with our funders, with our community, but it's also the relationships that we build with participants. And, giving them a place to stand and, tell their story and get the help that they need. That's what the work is all about. So happy to be part of that for all these years.
For sure. No, and I think that's a great point to end on, is that that's what it's all about, is helping the participants.
For sure.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Cindy, for taking some time and coming on here and, talking about what it's been like to be a part of John Howard for so long and to have done so much.
Yeah. It was great, Cindy. I say I could sit here and talk to you about this for at least another hour. I'm sure it's incredibly interesting, and as I really enjoy your perspective on John Howard and the work, and so thank you for coming on the podcast, and thank you for your service for 32 years.
Yes.
Well, thanks very much. I've enjoyed the time with you guys, and appreciate the offer to be here.
Of course. Yeah. And so thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks, Cindy. Thanks, Conor, for being here with us. We will be back, scheduled to come back Friday, December 13th for our next episode. But as always, you can find information on that on the John Howard Society of YouTube channel, our social media, and on our website. Thanks again for everyone for being on today, and everybody has a great weekend.
Absolutely. No, it's been a pleasure here. And if you enjoyed what you heard here today, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, and check out the website. If anyone's interested if you're like what you hear, you're interested in a little bit more about what the John Howard Society does, reach out to us. We're always looking for volunteers, and particularly if anyone's interested in volunteering with the board of directors, please reach out. You can find information on our website about how to do that. We'd be happy to hear from you.
All right. Well, thanks again, Cindy. You have a great day.
Thanks so much.
All right. Take care.
Cindy.
Best of luck.